All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I am Laura McCaig, owner of Laura McCaig Physical Therapy in Overland Park, Kansas. And I have a special guest with me today. This is William Mills. He is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he is owner of Doc Mills Concierge Therapy. He's a physical therapist and a personal trainer, and he specializes also in pelvic floor physical therapy. So William and I met about, what was it? Year and a half ago?
Yeah, something like that. Well,
Yeah.
first off, thanks for having me.
Yes.
This is going to be fun.
This is good.
Yeah, but I think it was about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
About a year ago, around this time, actually, I think.
Yeah.
We were in Florida for the mastermind group.
Right. We were in a mastermind coaching group, business coaching, personal development. And so I think we've seen each other in meetings in Florida several times. So thank you for coming on our podcast called Down There. So we're going to talk about
such a good name.
Things down there, and specifically prostate cancer. And one, it's kind of unusual to find a guy who does pelvic floor physical therapy. I think it's unusual to find anyone who does pelvic floor PT, but tell us, William, a little bit about how you got into physical therapy and just how you found this specialty. I know that's one thing people ask me a lot. How did you get into doing this?
Yeah. So the reason I got into physical therapy was because when I was a kid, my dad tore his ACL at a softball tournament for my that my sister was playing in. And whenever we were kids, she played travel softball. So this was like a week-long thing. He tore his ACL prior to the opening ceremonies, and he got taken out from being able to do any kind of weight bearing. Like it was bad. So we got home and he had the surgery. He was going to PT, and I just really enjoyed the relationship that I was able to observe between the physical therapist who was treating him, and the PT basically being able to be the guide of healing. So whenever it's time to choose what I wanted to do with my life when I was 18 and going to LSU, like getting into LSU, I didn't really have anything else in mind. And then whenever I was in college, I ended up tearing my ACL as well. And that kind of solidified it.
Oh, like father, like son, huh?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And he torn his 3 times in his life, so hopefully not quite like son, because I don't want to do that shit again.
No.
That's not a fun rehab, and it's long. But it was worth it. So fast forward to going to PT school, I had chosen in my mind that I would most likely have to own my own business when I was in school, because my passion was treating CrossFit athletes, and I wanted to be in a CrossFit setting. And I knew that, creating that, it's a dime a dozen to just jump into that and be an employee. And I realized that I was most likely going to have to create it. So fast forward to graduating, I had an opportunity to come back to Baton Rouge and work at a clinic that was cash-based, where I'd be able to do that. But the catch was the owner was a pelvic floor PT, and she wanted me to train under her to be a pelvic floor therapist, which I was like, you want me to do what?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, what? Because that was not, being a pelvic floor therapist wasn't on my radar at all. And I don't treat women with the pelvic floor issues. I treat just men.
Mhm.
And the plan was, she can treat both. I can treat men. If I ever want to get into the women's domain, I can, but I don't have to.
Mhm.
Well, um, I realized, I kind of came to a second realization that, I just needed to kind of do my own thing, from a, life and goal creating standpoint, and ended up stepping away from that, but I was already in it. So I just, continued on with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of took some time off from doing it, but I'm finally, I'm growing that side of the business, and seeing more of those patients and hanging out with more urologists. So here we are. But yeah, I would say the big point there is, it was never on my radar. It kind of just fell into my lap.
Okay. Yeah. I
If
think
you
that's
would have if you would have told me in PT school that I would be doing this, I would have said you're crazy. And that's what all my classmates say too.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm the CrossFit guy. I'm going to be doing shoulders, necks, backs, and knees day in and day out. And then, yeah, now I do now I do men's health.
Yeah.
Now I do butt stuff. That's what
Well,
I call it.
I graduated a few years before you did,
Yeah.
quite a few probably, and we didn't even know about pelvic floor PT
Yeah.
back then. And so, I practiced and I took a really long break um, from the practice. And it was because of a personal trainer decided to get my license back. And that's when I heard about it. It was a colleague of mine. She's like, hey, I think you'd make a great pelvic floor physical therapist. And I was like, what is that? And then she told me what that was. And like, okay, that's really weird. And people really do that, but checked it out. And for me, it was a really good fit. So it's not something everyone is wired to do, as
Right.
you know. And, finding someone who's a guy who does men's health, I think that's really cool. And I wish more men would get that as a specialty.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got a unique background that you're also a personal trainer.
Yeah. So I was a CrossFit coach and weightlifting coach prior to
Okay.
going to physical therapy school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one point I wanted to make whenever you were just talking, the thing about, more men not being in it, and why I had originally came to the conclusion that I could do it, is it's very much problem solving, just like any other physical therapy issue a physical therapist could come across. It's the same stuff, really. Like, the majority of my first session with men is subjective, hearing their story, what led up to this, what's the functional problem, what's the health related problem, what's the sexual problem, what's the incontinence problem. Like, we just paint a picture for all those things, and then this is how we're going to start to tackle all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just proceed with the process.
Yeah.
Process is the easy part once you have all the information laid out. But yeah, and then with this, the personal training side, all of the research that I've looked at with prostate cancer, as well as with life in general, decreasing all rate mortality through strength and conditioning has been a known percentage for a while. And recently, the Australian physios have been doing research on how that same kind of all rate mortality decrease can apply to prostate cancer patients. So I've been, planning and scheming some different programs that I'd like to start with people. but you know, like my middle to end stage rehab for anything looks like strength and conditioning
Hmm.
anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna have in the initial phases, I'm gonna teach a guy how to do a deadlift and a squat so they don't pee whenever they get up and out of their chair.
Yeah.
And you know, coordinate the Kegel and the pelvic floor activation with the bracing and all that stuff. But
So it is more than just doing Kegels, right?
oh my gosh, is it? It's way more than doing
Yes.
Kegels.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
most dudes that think they know how to do a Kegel don't actually know how to do a Kegel,
Yeah.
or at least all of a Kegel.
Right.
It's either they just, you know, squeeze their butt, or they use every they use every muscle in their body to like co-contract and get this little tiny contraction out of the pelvic floor muscles.
Yes.
And then we have to go through a process of relearning.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I think you made a good point there, William, that, and this is our topic is strength training for guys who have prostate cancer, have gone through the treatment or have gone through surgery. Strength training doesn't just mean being at the gym and lifting heavy weights. You need that strength training to do functional activities like,
strength training down there.
yes, strength training down there. And also, besides the two I's, incontinence and impotence or erectile dysfunction, there's a lot of other issues facing guys, physical issues like nutrition, but a big one is how the treatments, especially chemo, affect the body. You've got the fatigue that you're dealing with if you're on treatments like Lupron, which really screws up your hormones. Then you've got an increased risk of things like osteoporosis. You have an increased risk of loss of muscle mass, loss of bone mass. And I don't think that is really being addressed at all. And as we both know, and the studies show, strength training can really help with that.
Yep.
So for a guy who's had prostate cancer or is going through treatment, can you address that issue? How would they get started with that if they don't have access to a PT? And I would guess you don't have to be just a pelvic PT to help someone with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the majority of physical therapists who are in the cash domain, the out of network domain at this point, are more so, you know, we talk about as a business owner having multiple streams of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Most out of network physical therapists business are set up to where, you know, it's not just getting someone to return to prior level of function. It's getting them past that and working on performance goals and health goals, because the more capacity from a health, strength, and conditioning standpoint we can improve upon, the less likely you are to have the issue in the future. It's the exact same thing with prostate cancer rehab or pelvic floor pelvic floor PT in general. It's I explain it. I recently had a guy that I started seeing who had a shoulder replacement, and he's had a whole lot of stuff done to his pelvic floor and his bladder from a prostate cancer case 12 years ago. He had a lot of radiation. He's had a lot of scarring in his bladder, so he's had a lot of cystoscopes. He calls the Roto-Rooter.
Oh boy, yeah.
Uh,
Those are no fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds awful. And he's
Yeah.
also had a lot of kidney stones problems.
Ooh.
His urethra has been through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
To say that. But whenever we were initially talking about what it looks like to learn how to do Kegels from a sequencing standpoint, when to do it, how to do it, why you need to do it, how this makes sense with anything else that you're doing from a lifting standpoint. Before we got into that, he was like, I know how to do a Kegel. Whenever I had it, my urologist said, just, go and sit on the toilet and think about stopping your pee. And that was it. That was his level of okay, this is how I do a Kegel. I said, okay, got it. So let's think about your shoulder replacement, and let's think about if we're basing this on a level of function, not necessarily pain, just function. If I said, okay, we're gonna do this we're gonna work on your shoulder and rehab it, and the best that we got is you're gonna be able to pick your arm up about 30 degrees in front of you and never go past 90, and surely not do it with like a can of soup in your hand to put overhead.
So that'd be like maybe this.
Yeah. That would be, I would say, the equivalent of your Kegel ability just being able to stop the flow of urine while you're seated, right? There's more there. There's like,
Right.
what about jumping
Mm-hmm.
or jogging or standing up or sneezing?
Exactly.
Like, so it's a spectrum, and the spectrum requires load
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
across the spectrum. Load is load in the sense of like, for the Kegels, in terms of how I, treat and train, that is a lot like anything else. I start with the basics to get them to feel it. And then from there, it's just all application. Now that application could be quicker for other people. It could be heavier for other people. But going back to the idea of, teaching someone how to squat and hinge to get out of their chair without peeing on themselves, my next step with that is, okay, well, let's do a kettlebell swing. So it's a little bit more explosive. Oh, did you pee?
Yeah.
No. Okay, well, let's do 15. That kind of stuff. It's just body preparation. And I talk to my patients about how we're just putting your body in as many positions of variability for you to be able to control as possible. So if you do find yourself in a compromised position when you're doing something, that doesn't even have to be in the gym, just in life, your body's going to know what to do and where to go to decrease the chance of you getting injured. It's the same thing with decreasing the chance of you peeing on yourself.
Right.
After you've had your prostate removed.
Yeah, I have an example of that from a guy that I treated. Now, he didn't have the prostate cancer, but he had the TURP, surgery, and had a terrible time with leakage afterward. Got to the point where he was doing pretty well controlled, but it was really affecting his golf game.
Yeah.
He came in one day, he was mad, because he would pee every time he'd lift his golf clubs out of the trunk. And it got to the point he stopped. He was thinking of just not playing, which made him more grumpy, which then his wife is like, can you please help with this? So what we did, and this is why I love having my own practice, I'm like, let's take it out to the parking lot. His golf clubs were in the car. So we went out to his car and we practiced utilizing that pelvic floor contraction when he was doing the lifting.
And he got a knack
upper body mechanics, so he didn't hurt his back.
Yeah.
And so he did that. I'm like, so go ahead. And he lifted the golf clubs out. I'm like, did you pee? He goes, no, I didn't. So just stuff like that. I always say, you can know how to do a Kegel, but if you don't know how to do it in the right way or coordinate it with your body, it doesn't matter. And my other thing, I've got a video on this on my YouTube channel. Don't do Kegels while you're peeing, because that messes up the muscular connection between your brain and your bladder,
Yeah.
and can actually end up to having more urgency or more overactive bladder issues.
Right.
So I always, say that's not the best advice, because your pelvic floor is supposed to be relaxed
Yeah.
when you pee, not tight. Anyway, there's my little rant.
Speaking of that, my dad, so my dad is on Instagram,
Hmm.
and basically I'm convinced that he just uses Instagram to send me random posts that he finds hilarious. And he recently sent me this meme, and I'm gonna post it probably later this week, for pelvic floor stuff. But thinking about how we teach people not to use their pelvic floor whenever they're peeing because of it throws it off and it needs to be relaxed. He sent me this quote that I'm pretty sure was in a bathroom stall. And
Okay.
it says, "Don't be ashamed to fart while you urinate. There is no rain without thunder." Matthew Weinman.
There you go. Quote of the day.
And I thought that was perfect because whenever I post it, I'm gonna say, I mean, it's exactly right. It it's the same reason why you pee whenever you're having a bowel movement, because you're relaxing.
Hmm.
Everything just kind of falls out, which is what you want.
Hmm.
Um, I would say the majority of men, and I don't know how deep you want to get into this, into the hypotheticals, but I would say the majority of men
Go for it.
prior,
You've got the platform.
okay, I would say the majority of men prior to having a prostate cancer, either diagnosis or going through that whole process, you know, the stage of life for the median stage of life for when men get diagnosed is like late 50s, early 60s. And thinking about where most men are during that time, they're in higher positions in their job. If they've had a family, usually the kids are on the way out to go to college, tuition,
Yeah.
uh, all this stuff, high stress levels. I would say the the easiest way that I've explained it to dudes, once we've gotten on a certain comfort level, I always ask I always ask my guys, like, how do you want to talk about this? Like, do you want me to call it a penis? Do you want me to call it, what do you want to call it? And sometimes they say, just call it a dick.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, we can call it a dick. We could say dick and balls, we could say D and B's, we could say twig and berries.
Yeah.
It's fun to just allow them to say the proper, or not even the proper, it's not by any means proper, say the vernacular that they want to communicate on.
What's comfortable to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
because it makes it like dude stuff.
Yeah.
um and I just totally forgot where I was going with that.
No,
Dang.
that's good, because I know I've had several guys comment to me how much they hate this whole specialty being called women's health.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a women's health therapist who can help you. And they're like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not a lady. What's the deal?
Yeah.
I'm feeling,
I want to talk about that too, because that's a top down
yeah.
issue. That puts barriers up for more people
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
No, but what I wanted to say about the anatomy stuff,
Okay.
I basically boil it down to, okay, well, you're a tight ass. Like, if you're doing a Kegel, all of it's just coming from you trying to like pinch off a fart,
Mhm.
which is this muscle, and you have a whole lot of other muscles that control your bladder. And because you've had this issue prior to the surgery, now you're carrying it with you and you're trying to use your butt to stop your urine,
Yeah.
and that's not how this stuff works.
Right.
um so yeah, I say I boil it down to a tight ass if we're keeping it simple.
Mhm.
um but yeah, the like, what are the chances of I know we talked last time, and you said most of the dudes that get sent your way or not sent your way, they find you randomly on the
Right.
internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole idea of women's health specialty. I know I've done some history digging in the pelvic floor world, and in the pelvic floor world, they're no longer calling it women's health; they're calling it pelvic health.
Right.
But even then, there's no there's no route to take to become a men's pelvic health specialist. It's okay, you're going to go the women's pelvic health route, and then there's like 2 classes for
True.
dudes,
Yeah.
but we want you to take the whole thing. I'm like, no, I'm not taking the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just create my own with someone else, and it's going to be a men's health residency or a men's health course.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm not going back to physical therapy school to learn about how to treat stuff that I'm never going to treat just for the sake of getting an additional certification, you know?
And I know the U.S., it really lags far behind countries like the UK, Australia, as far as men's health.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of the latest research and all that stuff, I find in Australia,
me too.
UK, South Africa. Yeah.
It's all from Australia and UK whenever I'm looking up both urology and pelvic health
So
research.
we have a ways to go. This
We
is
do.
step. Yes. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to start strength training,
Yeah.
do you actually work with people? I know you're in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. Say there's somebody in New Orleans, or maybe even someone in, I don't know, Kentucky, who wanted some help with this. Could they contact you and
Yeah.
work with you even though you're not in the same city?
Yeah, with the strength and conditioning side of my practice, I could treat anyone anywhere. Well, it's not really treating, it's working with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Kind of like a coach.
yeah, like a virtual coach or
Okay.
like anyone else that would program an 8-week weightlifting cycle. It's just, with the intent of I have in mind what kind of issues they're having.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of curtail things from that based off more of how they move.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I would think with just the combination of maybe having prostate cancer treatment, you're still dealing with that. And we have the COVID restrictions. People aren't as active. They're at home more.
Right.
Probably even more of a need for getting on
Uh,
the strength training. Yeah.
yeah.
What if you don't have any weights or weight equipment at home? Can you still do strength training?
Yeah. With your body.
Mm-hmm.
Body weight still counts.
Yeah.
Now, I would say it's not as ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I say, going back to the idea of what we're talking about with the shoulder replacement. Oh, well, I could lift my shoulder now. Well, can you put a 5-pound weight in it and put it kind of over your head? No. Okay, well, then we need to work on that. That kind of idea. With only sticking to body weight exercises, it kind of misses the point of resistance because one, if you're only ever doing body weight stuff, then you're never really stressing. You're not really going past the point of stressing it in a way that you could achieve with an outside force or weight.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also understand the psychology of compliance and getting into the habit of, and for a lot of people that don't have not had access historically or have never really done it, you got to make it approachable.
Yeah.
So I'm all for looking at equipment, time, how many days a week are you looking to do this? How many days a week do you think you could be compliant if?
Mm-hmm.
Typically I typically start people out who have never done it before at 3 days a week. And that could look like anything really, but in those instances, we typically start out with body weight, and we'll say, okay, well, let's go through a trial run. You're going to do this for the next week. We'll recap at the end of the week, see how you're feeling going into next week, and then play with volume and intensity. And then typically by like week 3, if someone is doing it regularly, they're already feeling better because they're just moving more in general. And then we start talking, then I like, hook, line, and sink it with, oh, well, have you thought about going to Academy or Dick's Sporting Goods and maybe picking up a kettlebell?
Yeah.
And they're like, do you think that would help? And I was like, yeah, that would add a lot of variability to what I get to program for you. So it'll make it more fun. And they're like, I'm on my way.
Yeah. It's not that expensive. It's small. It's flexible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A dumbbell, a kettlebell, and some resistance bands
Okay.
is really all someone needs to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a $40 total.
Yeah.
If you buy it all together at a store or Amazon. Don't buy it from somewhere that's not going to Amazon Prime it, because you might not get it for 3 weeks with the current state of the union.
True. Yes. Yes.
But
sounds like a very worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
So.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I have another question for you. We were talking about, well, basically back to the Kegels and cues and dudes talk.
Yeah.
What is your favorite cue to use to activate the correct pelvic floor muscles in a guy? Because the Kegels, they're made for women.
Yeah.
We activate those back muscles.
Yeah.
So we kind of have fun playing around with some of the cues and how goofy they are, but they work. So what have you found that works for your patients?
Yeah. So Joanne Milios from Australia
She's awesome.
is probably the main researcher for prostate stuff in the physio world or physical therapy world. The rest of the world calls it physio. Us as Americans call it physical therapy. For whatever reason. It's like the metric system. We just have to be complicated and not use it. I was taking a course from her, and I use one of hers all the time, which is nuts to guts.
Nuts to guts.
Nuts
that one. Okay.
Yeah. Lift the nuts to guts. So I say
hey,
that.
Guys, if you're listening right now, I want you to try that.
We're not actually watching.
We're not watching. Yes.
So it's safe to try. Yeah. Nuts to guts is one that I use whenever I'm teaching the knack or them getting a hang of using the pelvic floor muscles to preemptively perform a movement, like sitting up out of a chair, or if they're about to cough or sneeze.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I find that typically helps guys feel it more of the mid-range, more of like the perineum, or if we're on good speaking terms, the gooch.
Uh-huh.
Is what most dudes will elect to call it. And then for the front side, I typically say, think of your penis as being the head of a turtle, and you're retracting it into the shell.
Yes.
So like a pullback, or like an elephant trunk, and you're lifting the trunk.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The front side.
I use the pull the turtle's head back in the shell. Yeah, that's probably
Go-to.
the second favorite. Yes, the second.
What's your first?
The first, I don't know if it's the favorite. It's probably not the favorite because I get a lot of looks. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, just do it. Pretend you're shortening your penis.
Okay.
I'm like, I know nobody wants to do that, but it really does activate those front muscles. And they've actually, somebody signed up for a study on this.
Oh, really?
Yes, there's research out there that fat Q plus the turtle Q are two of the most effective for getting those anterior pelvic floor muscles activated, which is what guys need
to be able to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Those are your sex muscles.
Yep. Did you hear that, guys? Say that again.
More important.
Say that again.
Those muscles are involved with sex.
Yes. Yeah.
Way more important, well, depending on your priorities, than pooping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For most men.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like, it's like anything else. If you oversimplify a thing, typically it's gonna irritate people that look deeper into it.
Mm-hmm.
But from a purely anatomical standpoint, like most people have no idea that they even have a pelvic floor, much less that it's basically like a sling.
Yeah. And
it holds your insides in from the bottom. It's the bottom of the Coke can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just it's funny to me to observe how most men just use their butt. And Joanne, I think she did a study that looked at that. Like most men prior to being taught is usually butt dominant,
Mm-hmm.
rather than using the whole thing.
Right.
The butt has nothing to do with the D and B's.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's there, but it's not the same. It's not the same muscles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just doing squats to strengthen your glutes isn't going to really help your pelvic floor much, right?
Nope.
Nope. Thank you. Because there is, especially with female fitness, a thing going around that, oh, you just need to strengthen your glutes or just do more squats and that'll help your pelvic floor. I'm like, not really. They can be what we call accessory muscles. And sometimes, like with my elderly patients who just can't get that pelvic floor activated, I'll use that to get a little overflow. But in general, it's like, nope, gotta, learn to retrain it like you would any other muscle in your body.
Yeah.
So that skeletal muscle, it applies to the same principles of training, like that shoulder, so you can get your shoulder up.
Right.
Instead of just, wow, I have great shoulder function. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I explain it like it's like a band.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they're functioning all together, they're all working, but you also have to be able to play a solo.
Yes.
It's the idea that you have to always use your glutes to be able to use your pelvic floor. That's not the most functional thing.
Right. Yeah.
Got to be able to play that solo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Anything else you want to share with us?
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
I got all the fun stuff out there.
Yeah. Well, good. It's I think it's fun to talk pelvic floor and just encouraging guys, and guys, if you're listening and you do have those problems, not with enlarged prostate or prostate cancer, and you kind of feel like medical systems let you down after your treatment's over, check out pelvic floor physical therapy. How would somebody contact you, William?
I have an Instagram and a Facebook. Website is under construction.
Okay.
The Instagram is connected to the Facebook. So you could just type in Doc Mills dot, as in like a period, DPT. Or email me
Okay.
at info@docmillsdpt.com would be
Great.
the easiest way.
Okay. And you're in Baton Rouge.
I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
And do you do telehealth?
I do.
People in Louisiana? Great. Okay. And yeah, somebody had asked me once, can you do virtual PT for this?
Yeah.
I say, yeah, you can. It's surprising how much you can accomplish virtually. And I know a lot of guys with prostate cancer, they don't want to go to a clinic necessarily,
Right.
go in person. So this would be a really super nice way to, get your man parts in order, as I say, and just, start getting more active, start working on the strength, just for general health as well.
Yep.
So thank you very much. This was
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here. And this is Laura McKeag with Laura McKeag Physical Therapy, wishing you all a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Laura.
All right. Thanks.